Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of having a sales routine or a sales structure. But before we dive into that, Kasey, who or what are you thankful for today?
So I am really thankful that my LinkedIn network is really, really helpful to me. Every time I post something that has a typo in it, someone is always super, super quick to send me a message and let me know that I wrote to instead of do, as happened most recently, or that I basically just trailed off and didn't finish a sentence, which happened last week. And
Oh,
I
those pesky
really, really
prepositions.
appreciate people having my back on LinkedIn.
And I love it when it's like that nice, hey, heads up, not sure if you noticed. There's a thing here
It's
versus
always
like,
it's always
it's always
very
very
nice.
nice. Yeah, it's always very
Yes.
polite. Oh
Yes.
gosh. Okay. And for me, along the same line, I'm really thankful for anyone who has ever proofread or copy read a really important email for me. Like I'm sure you've been there too, where you've taken like
Yes.
10, 15 stabs at writing this email and you really want to get it just right, whether it's to a prospect or your boss or who knows,
Applying for jobs.
applying for jobs. But you feel like you've stared at it so long, it's like the words aren't even making sense anymore.
Yeah.
Whoever it is that comes over and tells you, yes, it makes sense, it's clear, you're good, you are so beyond helpful, because at that point, I swear it might as well be in a foreign language. I've been having that happen more and more lately.
Yes,
So
I know how that goes.
thank you to our friends who tell us when we have typos and make sure that we are writing in coherent sentences. Super helpful.
Super helpful.
All right. So I proposed this topic, which is why you need a sales routine. And immediately we kind of jumped into a bit of a debate about what a routine is. But why it came up for me is, all right, it's 2020. I'm going through, my job search. Hopefully it's winding down, super exciting. But at the same time, it's kind of reminding me the importance of having structure and a routine in my day. Not just like you come into the office and I check my email and then I prospect for 30 minutes, and then I do this and then I do that. But just having that repeatable process in your day, there's a psychological impact on your performance, regardless of whether you're in a job or out of a job. And that psychological impact also impacts your performance. So kind of what came up for me today was I realized that I needed to change up my routine, that my routine that I was doing wasn't working for me. I wasn't getting as much out of the day as I wanted. I wasn't as organized. I didn't feel as comfortable doing what I needed to get done in the day. And I changed it. It's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it tomorrow. And I rolled that out today, and immediately huge impact on productivity and results. And it got me thinking about how often that happens in sales in general. How often do we get into kind of a slump, or, you come back from a break, but when was the last time you really thought about how you structure your day? Why you do what? Or is it just we're all just slaves to our calendars and we go wherever our calendar tells us to go at that particular moment?
So I'm a huge advocate of this. Like, you asked that sort of rhetorical question of when is the last time you thought about this. I think about it literally all the time.
You're kind of
I
the
am,
exception. You actually have a morning routine that involves like doing things in a specific order. My morning routine involves the dog barked, I need to let him out and then make myself coffee. That is as
yeah, no,
far as my morning routine goes.
I'm pretty obsessive about um, habit formation and kind of intentional environmental design and routines and systems to be productive. And I think honestly, one of the first big sort of aha moment I had with this is I had tested every productivity app under the sun. And I tried Wunderlist and Todoist and Evernote and you name it, all of these things. And I'd get really invested in them at first, and I'd create all these tasks and all these lists and things. And then I wouldn't follow up with any of them. And I remember in my days when I was on a sales team and I had Salesforce, I would make tasks for all the
Yep.
things that I would need to do. And then I would never cross those tasks off. And then I would have so many tasks that were like 3 weeks old. And I'm sure, at least I hope Salesforce has fixed this in the like 6 years that since I last used it. But back then you had to open up each one in order to mark off that it was done or to archive it. And at some point I had like 200 old tasks that I hadn't done and weren't even relevant anymore. And I had to like go into every single one, and I was so frustrated. So about, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I noticed that I was writing lots of to-do lists on printer paper in the office. And that it helped me be more productive and get more things done, because there's something really satisfying about writing down a list and checking it off. But then I would have these like stacks of printer paper that were like all disorganized, and some are notes for projects and some are lists and things. And so that's when I made the switch to the bullet journal. And I am pretty obsessive about these things. I have a to-do list. I write my to-do list every single night before bed, even on the weekends. And I have my whole routine, and it makes me a much, much more productive human. So I am in full support of this.
All right. So this is going to be Kasey giving advice to the rest of us, or those of you who are more like me and are much more reactive. When I was at SDR and in sales, it's funny because I was the opposite of you in Salesforce. I lived and died by my Salesforce task list, and I kept that so clean it was ridiculous, because that was how I was able to create a routine. I would go in, and based on how I sorted my list, I knew exactly what to do, when, to who, and how many times. Super easy. Outside of Salesforce, everything was sticky notes, which I
Yeah.
still have a color-coded sticky note actual methodology in terms of pink means must be done immediately. Yellow is contract work. Green is job search stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've got this organized. It is chaos on my desk, but it is slightly organized, mostly organized. Just no one understands it but me. The point is, it's not just about how you stay organized. That's a whole other topic. But the big thing is the system of how do you know that you are getting done everything you need to get done in the day as efficiently as possible?
Yeah.
That's the impact of a routine. If you've got a routine or a structure or whatever you want to call it, you can leave the office knowing you got everything you needed to get done as efficiently as possible. If you don't, how do you really know?
Yeah. And and again, I know that this is a little bit semantics, but this is why I like to think in terms of systems. Because some of these things, some of them are routines where you're going to do the same thing every single day, but some of it also is like, when X happens, I do Y.
Yeah.
And so like having like a determined sort of flow for things and a determined system for how you manage tasks and activities and information and all these other things, it really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. All right, so system. We'll roll with system for the purposes of this. So your daily system specifically. So I did some research, pulled out the old Google, have some really good articles, which we'll put in the show notes for ideas if you need some inspiration for why you need this or how to build it. And, one of the things I found really interesting was Lori Richardson actually wrote an article about, how having a sales routine is important for success. But she made a really good point, which is true. Very few salespeople make a regular habit out of the process of going and finding people who fit your prospective buyer profile. Like taking that time, it's really easy to fall into that kind of sine curve of, yay, I have tons of pipeline, I don't need to prospect. And then all of a sudden the pipeline goes away and, oh gosh, I need to spend all my time prospecting. Oh yeah, I've got tons of pipeline, I don't need to prospect. Oh, I have no pipeline, I must prospect all the time. It's a really easy sine curve to get on, and it's much easier to narrow that amplitude if you just do a little bit of it every day. So that's where the system comes in. But the other thing she talks about that I think is far more common is not having a system to connect with people who weren't a fit right now but will be in the future. Like that's the number one thing in terms of coaching or mentorship or whatever, that I talk to people and they'll do a call back. Oh, call me back in 3 months. And the only thing people do, a lot of salespeople do, is set a reminder to call them back in 3 months.
Yeah.
there's so much more that can be done there. And just by having a system to send them a couple nurture emails, keep yourself top of mind, put a note, not just in Salesforce, but in your calendar or whatever you need to do to make sure it ties back in. But just those are really simple examples of things that having that routine will keep and make your job easier too. So shout out to Lori for writing a really good point there. But here's my thinking, and Kasey, tell me what you think. I think there are 3 really good elements or 3 really good reasons to have a sales structure.
Yes.
Number 1, I think it's really helpful when it comes to efficiency. How can you know you're being as efficient as possible? I think we can all agree, hopefully, that the days of brute forcing sales are hopefully waning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't about coming in and putting 10 hours in the office. This is about coming into the office, doing 8 hours and making it look like 10. Being as efficient as possible so you get as much done as possible. 2, I think it really helps with just practice. Nobody's naturally good at everything. Having this system in place means that you can compensate for your weaknesses, and you can also practice those things efficiently enough so that they're not weaknesses for very long, or at least you're minimizing the impact of them.
Yeah.
And then last thing, just knowing where you're weak. If you find yourself, for me at least, I tend to avoid really detailed record keeping. I hate it. I don't like doing it. It's just a part of my life I don't like. I'm good at it. I don't like doing it. So I will lump that stuff at the beginning to get it out of the way. And then I feel like, yay, I accomplished something, versus shoving it away in the back and pretending it doesn't exist and then getting yelled at because, oh, Salesforce isn't up to date.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with all of these. And I think there's a couple of more. So 1, I think there's a lot of skills that come into play as a sales professional. And I think this is why we talk sometimes about people that have done something that required discipline when they were younger tend to do well in sales. Is there's a lot of stuff that, like, no, you don't see results right away, but like it's the slow build. And so how do you having a system in place where it's forcing you to do these like little things that compound to pay off down the line. But like, one thing I think about a lot is I used to have a powerlifting coach who would say you need to have the process and the program for for working out or for having some sort of physical or health related goal, because if you're relying only on like motivation to get you in the gym, you will lose motivation before you get to your goals. So you need to have a habit. You need to have a habit in place that keeps you doing that work, right? Like motivation just does not last. It does not get you through the hard times. Willpower is a finite resource, like all of these other things. And so you need to have something that takes the guesswork out of like knowing what to do, but then also takes the willpower, takes the motivation part totally out of it. You've got a plan, you've got a program, you know what to stick to, and it will deliver results. You don't have to have something else to like keep you on track.
I kind of love that. So if you forget my 3 reasons, just that. because that's really, I mean, how often have we all been there where the motivation fluctuates? Sometimes just like, I don't want to be here. I love my job. I love my coworkers. I don't want to be here. My dog is sick. I feel sick. I'm distracted by something else. You know what? Screw it. I'm just tired.
Or sometimes it's, I'm in a really good mood and I just want to like sit back and like talk, talk with my friends and like, I actually feel a little too good. I'm not motivated to like really hustle and get it going. But if you've got a system in place, it's like, this is what I do every single day, or this is what I do when this happens. It helps you stick to that plan and stick to that routine, even when you really don't want to.
And that doesn't mean that you don't change the plan.
No.
In fact, that plan can change, I would hope, fairly regularly, not frequently, but regularly.
Yeah.
So that's a whole thing. So Kasey, since I'm going to go back to deferring to you here, like what are some things that should be in a sales structure or in a sales system? Like we think about like a day in the life. Like how do you build that? How do you know what's
Okay.
good?
So what I think about is I think you sort of think big picture and then work to the small.
Okay.
So if you think about like, what are your goals? What are the things that you want to achieve? And then can you like reverse engineer how you're going to get there?
Okay, so
So
I have a giant number and I'm at 0% attainment. My goal is
yeah,
to get to that number and not work 80 hours a week.
exactly. So then start to think about, okay, what is everything, what needs to be, you've got this giant number for the quarter. Okay. What needs to be done? What are big things that need to be done on a monthly basis? Okay, is it I need to have a certain number of opportunities, new opportunities in the pipeline? Is it I need to go to a certain number of events that connect me with the right people? Um, I don't
What
know.
partners do I need to engage at least once a month so they can be
Exactly.
feeding me things?
Exactly. Do I need, if I'm an AE, do I need to be having, how often in a month do I need to be having one-on-ones with my SDR to make sure that they're on top of things? How often do I need to check in or like review the work that they've done? If I've got an SE, how can I, build a structure to support that SE so that they're doing the work that they need to do to help me close these deals? Like think about all of these things on a monthly basis. Then I would look and I would think about what are all of the things you need to do on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis, it might be I need to send a report to my VP of kind of the status of where I am. I need to um, check in on every single open opportunity. Like I don't know what it is, but then you think about the weekly and then reverse engineer and think about the daily. And so the daily, it might be I need to make this many number of calls. I need to send this number of emails. I need to um, I don't know, post something on social media. I need to, whatever the case may be. And some of these things you want to think about, they are things that it them in and of themselves are not going to deliver the goal that you want, but they help you get there. So maybe if you are earlier in your career, it's need to read for 15 minutes every day so that I can learn more about the industry that I work in or the role that I have, or so that I can sharpen my skills in some way.
Or I need to
Or
set aside 20 minutes a day to prep for this demo certification that I know I have to pass by week 6.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
The other thing
And
I
I,
think, oh, go.
the one thing I was just going to say is like, it's really, really helpful as you think through this stuff is to read some books or consume some of the content around habit formation. I'm a huge advocate of Atomic Habits by James Clear. He just like breaks it down into super, super simple, easy to understand. It's like, how do you create a system in your life? Because there's a ton of information out there about how you build these systems and these structures to take the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, and I'll jump on there. I'm a huge, huge, huge believer, especially if you're in a very detail and systems oriented sales process. So whether you're an SDR, which is inherently detail oriented, or an AE, where just there's a lot of boxes to check, I am a huge, huge, huge fan of the printed checklist, especially a printed
Oh,
laminated checklist, because then you could take your dry erase markers and write on it.
ooh, I
Oh,
like that.
that is my number one life hack, is
Yeah,
the printed qualification checklist that's laminated, and then you just take the whiteboard markers and literally on a call doing a disco, you're writing with it. And then when
I
you're
love
done, then
that.
you have to enter it into Salesforce, and then you erase it and try again. But
That's
that way you
wonderful.
know you're getting through everything every single
Yeah.
time. So those are like my must-have ask questions, laminated card, write it out. Boom.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing, right? Like, so that in the moment, you don't even have to think about it.
Yep.
It keeps you on track. And like, we all need this idea that like somehow we can just magically know what to do in any given moment. No, it's all about creating these like repeatable systems that you learn, so that in the moment you are free to think about that conversation you're having with the prospect, instead of thinking about, oh, well, what question should I ask
Yeah,
them?
intense listening.
Yeah.
And then at
And
the end, you just
like,
go through and double check it.
and I want to say, I think it's Jocko Willink who says this. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to like Google it after this. But there's a great quote about like how discipline actually creates freedom.
I love
And
that.
because you don't have to think about the stuff that needs to get done, you have more mental space to think about the things that can be done, or the things that you want to do.
I love it. It's like Steve Jobs wearing that same turtleneck every day, so that way he doesn't have to waste a thought about what he's going to wear that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Something else I find is really key when it comes to this stuff is the importance of your calendar.
Yes.
So this is something I think a lot of people do early on in their sales careers, and then they kind of ebb and flow back on and off. I know I do, at least, is the importance of putting everything on your calendar.
Yeah.
Like time blocking everything. So if I know I need to add X number of leads to the pipeline every day, then I need to block Y amount of time every day.
Yeah.
And literally blocking it off and actually following it, and not turning that, 60 minutes of prospecting into, oh, I'll just go grab some coffee quick. And then all of a sudden it's 30 minutes since I've been at my desk.
Yep.
But really being authentic with yourself and with your calendar to make sure everything happens in the way it does. And the other thing I found really helpful when thinking about my calendar is thinking about customer facing activities and non-customer facing activities.
Okay. Expand on that.
So what I mean by that is literally customer facing activities are activities I'm literally doing, engaging with my buyer. So whether that's calling, emailing, just
Yeah.
net things where I like the way I kind of describe it in my head is there a chance someone says yes at the end of this? Is there a chance I get a deal, I get a meeting, I get a next step out of this specific type of activity that I'm doing right now? Then it's customer facing. If there isn't a chance that someone can say yes at the end of it, it's a non-customer facing. So that's team meetings, prospecting, database cleanup, internal email, reporting, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
If it's non-customer facing, time that it happens doesn't matter. It may need to happen today, but it doesn't need to happen necessarily at specific times. So I always start by scheduling customer facing stuff first, so that prime call hours, prime email hours, I'm doing things when they have the best chance of success. And then I'll try and schedule team meetings, meeting with my SDR, meeting with my SE, doing my database cleanup. I'm going to try and do those during the times of the day when I know someone is least likely to pick up the phone, least likely to answer an email. And at the same time, I do the same thing. And email is something a lot of people think, oh, I can do email whenever. No, email is just as important. Now, especially if someone is responding to an email that you sent them, the best time to respond is within like 30 seconds of getting it, or maybe a minute or two, or during the times when they're most likely to be checking their email, which is right when they get in, right before or after lunch, and at the end of the day when they're about to leave for the day.
Yeah.
So if you do your customer facing email during those times and block that time, you're already helping.
And I think that's a really good point. You also want to think about when you're most productive, or I realized that I am the most productive in terms of like knocking out big projects and things like that in the morning. And so I've gotten a little bit away from this in the last couple of months, but for the most part, I schedule meetings for the afternoon so that I can focus on getting like work done in the mornings. And so you also want to think about like, who you're going to be talking to, but then also what you're good at. So I don't know, if you tend to eat big lunches and I'm kind of slow right after lunch. Maybe that's the time where it's like you're doing updating Salesforce or you're doing kind of more sort of busy work and not stuff that requires a lot of energy or for you to talk to someone.
See, that kind of cracks me up because I kind of take the opposite
Yeah.
tact, which is the times of day that I feel like are the slowest
Yeah.
is when I will schedule, if I have a choice, the meetings that I know will energize me the most.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
without
so
a
I'm
doubt.
so I'm definitely someone who I don't eat big lunches, but I definitely hit an early afternoon lull.
Yeah.
My brain starts to dip. So that's when I'm always scheduling one-on-ones. I'm scheduling team meetings. So those are the times when I know I'll fire back up for those. I know I'll be able to turn
Yeah.
it on. If
Totally.
I scheduled Salesforce updating during that time, I would not get any of it done.
Yeah. Fair
So
enough.
it's,
Right. So it's all about learning, like,
and
and really
I learned
thinking
this by
about,
trying this stuff.
yes.
So, and I'm sure,
And
and you're the same way.
I think this is the key point, is that when you create one of these systems or these routines the first time, a lot of what you're going to be doing is speculating about what's going to work for you. And
Yes.
so you need to then put it into action. You need to practice it a few times, and then you need to be really self-aware and honest with yourself
Yeah.
about what is working and what isn't, and just keep tinkering. And so for me, it's like, like I said, I tried all of these different productivity apps and none of them stuck. But I kept trying things. And then I tried the bullet journal and it really stuck for me and it made a huge difference. Or I've learned that if there's a project that I know I really want to do and I'm excited about, but I'm just not doing it, it usually means that I have not broken it out into small enough chunks when I'm planning and I'm thinking about it, and I need to take a step back and like do a better job of really like planning it, right? And so, but it took a lot of trial and error before I learned that about myself. And so you just got to know going into a process like this, you're gonna fail, you're gonna fuck it up, and
Yeah.
that's okay. You
Make sure you
learn
learn
and
something from the fucking up.
you get better, you get better and you get better and you get better, and eventually, you build a system that is far more effective than the first one you tried.
And I'll say this, I'm not someone who that process came naturally to. I was not naturally very honest with myself. I found it way too easy to explain away inconsistencies and make up stories about why I was doing what I was doing and justifying everything to myself. What really made the difference for me when it came to building my routine or my structure, my system, was working with my manager
Yeah.
and going to and it became a part of basically we did obviously did weekly one-on-ones, but we did kind of monthly, we called them like state of the business sort of things. I forget what term we used, but basically like here's how I'm tracking meetings.
Yeah.
And in those meetings, it would be, here are the numbers, here's what I'm gonna do to fix it, and here's my routine for the month.
Yeah.
Here's kind of the things I'm doing, and here's how I'm prioritizing and structuring my day to make sure I get everything done. Those meetings were where I learned through kind of this Socratic method of being verbally interrogated. Okay, well, why are you doing it this way? Why aren't you doing it that way? Have you tried this yet? That was really where I got the iteration out of it.
Yeah.
And it took months of that for me to really get good at doing it on my own.
Yeah.
So also don't despair if this isn't something that comes naturally. It's not uncommon.
Yeah. And
And
and just know, like, I used to be the least disciplined, most disorganized human under the sun. I was very lucky that I've always had a pretty good memory, and so I'd stay on top of stuff just because of that. But it was like, despite me doing everything wrong, it took a long time for me to get here. So if I can do it, truly anybody can, I
the
promise.
oh yeah, I'm just laughing because the number of salespeople who I've heard make that exact joke, like, I mean, and I've said this before too, like people are like, oh, you're always so good with names. I'm like, no, I'm good with Salesforce. If it's in Salesforce, I don't have to be good with names. But if
Yeah.
you ask me I'll be honest, actually one of my failings as a human, I am horrible with names face to face.
Yeah, me too.
I am absolutely terrible. So if you meet me at some point and I forget your name the next time I see you, please don't take it personally. I'm really terrible about it. The only way you get good at this stuff is if it's in the system, because then you don't
Yeah.
have to have the good memory, which I can cover a lot, but I can't cover everything. And one of the things I'll say too, some managers are not brilliant with this stuff, or they have their one way of organizing their day. Maybe Kasey's your manager and you're more of an Ashleigh style. That's okay. I mean, obviously do what your manager tells you to do, but there are 1.5 million different ways to structure your day, to have this system. Just have one.
Yeah. And
Just
it just
have one.
the organization and productivity and stuff like that is frankly just like sales, where everybody has their own kind of way of doing it. And yes, there's lots and lots of overlap, but you basically have to just talk to a bunch of people, read a lot of things, and just try stuff, because
Yep.
what is going to work for you is going to be totally different from what works for someone else. But the only way you learn is by trying and doing. And I will be honest, there are certain things that I never thought would work for me that really do. Um, and so just, be keep an open mind when someone's tells you about their sort of process, because you might find something that seems really strange or weird or whatever, and you try it and it really, really works for you.
Yeah. Like I can give you an example of that. The first time someone explained call blocking to me, I was super confused. So call blocking, what I'm talking about here is this idea that you do all of your calls in 1 or 2 or 3 chunks in the day. So I know I've got to make all these calls. Great. So I'm going to do nothing but calls for 60 minutes. Like even if someone tells me to send them an email on the phone call, I don't stop calling. I make a note and I send them the email later.
Yeah.
And this thoroughly confused me because I had a great system for how I handled all of that. But I tried it. And despite all of my misgivings, I think I doubled the number of calls I could do in a day.
Yeah.
It just, for some reason, it worked so much better. It was so much cleaner. I was so much more efficient.
You
And
get in a rhythm.
yeah, for me especially, I got in a really good rhythm. It helped me hone in my scripts, get my scripts a lot tighter, get my voicemails a lot tighter. And at the same time, it also helped me write better emails, because
Yeah.
then at the end of the day, or whenever it was time for me to do those emails, I spent more time with them. And I started
Yeah.
personalizing more and doing those sort of things, because I was doing nothing but writing those emails. There wasn't that pressure. If I need to get back on the phone and do my next call, or doing those sort of things, that sounded completely foreign to me. And I was certain it would not work. And it 100% did.
Yeah. And that
So
makes sense. I mean,
it does. And
it,
I also know people who cannot do that. I've
yeah.
worked with people, I've coached people who they try that and it does not work. They need to do kind of the one person at a time mentality. That's how they do their best work. And that's fine. I've coached people who they tried the call blocking, they tried it for a few days, and just through working with them, I could just see it was not working with the way their brain worked. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just have a structure, just pick something
Yeah.
and try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And keep doing the check-in both with yourself and your boss or mentor
Mm-hmm.
about what is working and um, what their suggestions are for improving it.
Yeah. One last thing I love to do when it comes to like systems and stuff is always ask yourself, what's my favorite part of the day and what's my least favorite part of the day?
Yeah.
And that will tell you a lot about what to schedule when and how to do it.
Yeah. And I think another way too to look at it is what energizes me and what
Drains.
drains me. Good
Yeah.
word. Yeah. Because I think that that can tell us a lot about how we structure things, but then also like where you might need more structure because you don't really want to do that thing. And
Yeah.
so you need the structure to force you to do it.
Yeah. Like there's all this stuff out there I've read that says like, oh, do your least favorite thing first thing in the morning. Nope. Not going to happen
Yeah.
for me. I'm not a
Yeah.
morning person. I can't do it first thing. It won't happen. I will delay
Yeah.
starting my day.
That's my dad's my dad's process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish stuff like that worked. I wish I could just like, oh, I'll just maybe, I don't know. Maybe I need to get more discipline so I can have more freedom in my life.
Yeah. I know.
And that kind of
Well,
blew my mind. I love that.
yeah. Yeah, that has really, really stuck with me. Yeah, I mean, I am very much just like a big believer in having systems and process for things, and it's made me a much more productive person, and it's also I have systems and process around my self-care. So, I mean,
Oh, that's an
you know,
overlooked topic.
yeah. And on it, like for me, one of the weekly habits for my self-care is I take a long hot bath at least once a week. And I never used to be a person that did that. And I used to think people that took baths were weird. And now I love it. That's one of my favorite parts of the week.
Well, how do you think baths are weird? Baths are amazing.
I just would always get very bored. And now they're very centering and very grounding for me, and I really appreciate them. But I mean, because I have a very structured routine, I get up every morning and I meditate for 15 minutes. I do yoga for 10 to 20 minutes. I read my book, like, I mean, all sorts of things. And it just makes me a much calmer, happier, and healthier person. And so keep in mind, there's a lot that you can do about your routine or your system that also just makes you feel like a better person. And it's not just about productivity and making money. It's also about just being a better version of you.
Now you're making me want to go write out a routine or something like that for my self-care as well. That
Well,
actually
you
sounds like
should.
fun.
I'm a huge advocate of this.
I know. You're being a good influence. Stop it. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
so
hopefully this episode has been a good influence on you, dear listener.
yeah, exactly. So we're super curious to hear from all of you about your routine. Like, how do you structure your day? How do you build systems that make you more effective, better at work, a better person, all of these
What are
other things?
your
Love to hear
hacks?
from this. Yeah, what are your hacks? Like, share those with us. Again, as always, follow us on social. We're both very active on Twitter and LinkedIn. Um, Also, I think we will be putting it on the website tonight or tomorrow. By the time you listen to this, it should be live. We have, it's actually two new things. One, we have, we'll be putting up a whole process for how you can submit content to the other side of sales. We would really love this to be a community kind of feel. And so we'd love to hear from all of you. So check out www.othersideofsales.com. But also, we will be launching our job board. So if you are looking for a job, go to othersideofsales.com and we'll have a link to the job board there. But also, if you are hiring sales reps, and particularly if you want to show your kind of commitment to diversity and inclusion and creating a really positive sales culture, go to the Other Side of Sales website, check it out. We'd love to have your jobs listed and help you find just amazing, amazing sales candidates.
And what makes the job board unique is the only way to get featured at this time
Yes,
is not to buy in. It's not to give us more money. It's to give us some insight into your diversity and inclusion initiatives at your company. You give us that information,
absolutely.
the job gets featured. So it's the only way to get featured on the job board is to walk the walk, as it were. So if you are considering that next move, definitely worth checking out from a looking for your next challenge perspective, as well as if you're looking for a way to validate and share some of the really cool things your company might be doing.
Boom. Yeah.
Check it
So
out. We're
check it
excited.
out, go to the site. And then, of course, as always, please share this podcast with people that you think would be interested. Please comment on Spotify or Stitcher or Apple. And let us know if there's any topics or any guests that you think we should be included.
Make that a part of your routine.
Make that a part of your routine. Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.